Okay, let's watch this video. This is the new raid. All bosses, I'm pretty sure, from the new Dragonflight expansion patch. So let's see. I haven't seen any boss, and it comes out in like 6-7 hours here in NA. So I wanna see what Blizzard cooked.
All right, to save you guys time, we put all of the previews in one video separated by chapters so you can hop to whatever boss you want. So here's a quick preview of every boss in Amirdrassil, the Dream's Hope. The full raid guides are coming out soon, so check out our Patreon to get early access to those and to also help support the channel. To kick things off, we first start with Gnarlroot, the first boss of the raid. It's a pretty simple boss with two alternating phases. In phase 1, the boss spawns a bunch of these inactive ads and you have to activate some of them by dropping these circle debuffs on top of them, otherwise they all become active at the same time going into phase 2, and that's not
Okay.
ideal. In phase 2, the boss goes
Is this
immune
supposed
and
to be
grows a bunch
mythic?
of these roots around the room. To break his immunity, you have to soak these circles that spawn around the room and then run into all of the roots to burn them. Once they're all burned, the boss takes double damage for like 20 seconds while also pulsing a crazy amount of raid damage and then starts phase 1 again. Now on to boss 2, Agira the Cruel. This boss has one phase. She throws spears at players that keep them in a pool of fire until the spear is killed by the raid. At full energy, she marks 3 weapons around the room and makes you choose which weapon you want her to fight with. The raid has to stand on the weapon and soak some of the damage to get her to choose it, and then she casts the weapon's ultimate ability a couple of times. One of them has a big group soak on the tank that you have to alternate half of the raid soaking each time, and then dispel a bunch of stuns on anyone who's soaked. One has big circles to
Okay.
dodge that she leaps to and then does raid damage, and one has healing
This boss,
absorbs on the whole raid that have
this boss looks super fun, and I like the floor of like the fight is completely like blue ish, and the boss mechanics are like red, so you can always see what's happening and all of that. Because I remember with a boss in Shadowlands, the the floor or the place where you fight the boss was also blue, and the boss abilities were also blue, so you couldn't see shit, you couldn't see anything. I'm glad that they are two different colors, so you can actually see what's happening and dodge.
have to be healed off in time or else they explode. Once you pick one weapon, you can't pick it again, so you do have to deal with all of them eventually. And once you run out of weapons to pick, she gets real mad and you're dead. For boss 3, Volcaros, random players get targeted with circle debuffs and should spread out to minimize damage. A big tail slams the ground, showing a shadow beforehand. Avoid this shadow to prevent getting one shot by the slam. It's actually
This,
pretty creepy to see this.
this one is okay. The floor is not red, but you can still see what's happening. It's okay. It's decent. I like it. And to be honest, the colors here are really like powerful. So it's more like orange, like a really potent orange. I don't know how to say it. Um, so it's pretty cool. The floor in this case, I guess it's like gray-ish with, I don't know, black or and white. Not really. It is like coffee or something. I don't. I'm gonna shut up. It's good. That's what matters. You can see the mechanics happening and not eating them because it's the same color as the floor.
For the first time. At full energy, the boss spawns 2 big group soaks. You'll need to split the raid in half to soak them both. These soaks drop a big patch of fire on the ground, and when the boss reaches full energy again, the soaks appear on the other side of each fire, meaning the raid should stay split in half and battle the boss from opposite sides of the room for the majority of the fight. Eventually, the entire room fills up with fire from the soaks, and you'll end up with nowhere safe to go, and you're dead. The 4th boss is the
Oh,
Council of Dreams.
that's
There's 3
interesting.
bosses, each with their unique abilities and mechanics that all work together, creating a super fun and complex boss fight. You'll be facing Urktos, Erwin, and Pip, and the goal is to try to kill them around the same time to prevent them from rezzing, which is actually made a little bit harder because Urktos, the bear, is movable while the other 2 just jump around randomly. So Urktos has a charge that goes through the tank. Some of the raid needs
Okay.
to stand in its path each time to mitigate the raid-wide damage at the end of the charge. Erwin spawns poison flowers all over the place that do big raid damage to anyone standing in them. And Pip polymorphs random players into ducks,
Pip.
which then need to run through some of the poison flowers on the ground to eat them and get the ability to unduck
I
themselves.
like the
These
mechanics
regular
of this
abilities
raid.
interact with each of the boss's full energy cast. Urktos does a big raid-wide channel which you have to interrupt by having one of the ducks remove their polymorph on top of him. Erwin does a big raid-wide channel which you can interrupt by making sure an Urktos charge passes through her. And Pip puts a damage absorb on everyone that you have to break in time by standing in the poison flowers for a couple
For everything that I've seen, very good raid. Blizzard, good job, super fun. But this is only 3 bosses. Let's see.
of seconds. Now, Zax is
The
a
rest-
big fan of fights that have interacting mechanics like this, so this one's definitely 2 thumbs up from him, and I also have to agree with that. This fight looks super fun. Now, moving on to the 5th boss,
Does.
Laredar, Keeper of the Flame. Laredar is actually the boss that comes after Volcaros and has 2 phases. This boss is a little funky and has a million mechanics, but once you get the general idea, it's actually not too hard to execute. In phase 1, the main goal is to spawn a shield that the raid needs to then stand in before the boss gets to full energy and one-shots the raid. And there's quite a few steps to spawning a shield, so brace yourself. You have to kill some Trent ads, then heal them to full, and then keep healing them as they energize the seed in the middle of the room. Then, once some fixating roots spawn, click the seed to start breathing life energy in front of you and aim it at the roots to make them targetable. Then, kill the roots, heal them to full, and then finally spawn a shield. Super simple and not overly complicated at all. It's actually pretty easy to execute when you're doing it. Otherwise, there's also a charge that the tanks need to run away from the raid, and some fire orbs to soak before they get to the boss. Once the boss gets to 40% or gets to full energy for the 3rd time, he channels massive raid damage for a few seconds and then starts phase 2. This phase is much simpler. There's little circles to soak to keep them from blowing up on the raid, heal absorbs on random players that have to be taken out of the raid, and finally a pretty funky tank mechanic. The boss casts a frontal cone that applies a debuff which makes you unhealable. You can only leech health from players around you in a small circle. Yeah, good luck getting people to stay in that circle. So for boss number 6, Nimue Weaver of the Cycle, we actually had to do a quick mic change because the boss had some significant last-minute changes from Blizzard. Nimue is another out-of-order boss that comes after Council, and it's got 2 alternating phases. In phase 1, there's these wispy, smoky lines on the ground that give you a stack of a short dot debuff when
This is what I mean. The floor is similar to the color of these things, so it's hard to see what's happening. Fuck.
you touch them. But other mechanics in the fight force you to sometimes have to run through them. The main one being these flowers that spawn all over the room. They all pulse raid-wide damage, and players have to stand on them to get them to shrink over time and disappear. There's also green beams to dodge that slowly move out from the boss, which stun and damage anyone they hit. And the only heroic change in this phase is that there's some extra debuffs you have to take out of the raid. At full energy, the boss starts phase 2. It goes immune and spawns 2 ads on opposite sides of the room that your raid has to split up and kill to be able to hit the boss again. But first, the tanks have to soak a circle around the boss in order to get the buff that lets everyone behind them run through the lines on the ground without taking any damage. Then each side can follow their tank to their ad. The ads on either side don't do anything too special, just a random cone to dodge and some swirlies, but you absolutely cannot move them across any of the lines on the ground or else you're dead. And once the ads are dealt with, it's back to phase 1 and back to the regular mic. And now we're moving on to the final 3. So Smolderon is the 7th boss of the raid and has 2 alternating phases. In phase 1, half of the raid gets little circles around them that pulse AoE damage and force them to spread out for a few seconds. And at the same time, there's a group soak on the tank that the other half of the raid has to soak.
This is another one of those that I mean. The floor is like red, a little bit like that, and the mechanics of the boss are also like this red, orange, so it might be complicated to see what's happening. I hope it's not like that.
Which puts a big healing absorb on them, as well as a debuff that you actually want to have for phase 2. This happens twice each phase, so everyone will end up soaking and having a debuff. At full energy, the boss runs to the middle of the room and starts phase 2, spawning random patterns of these fire rings for everyone to dodge. Anyone that has a debuff from soaking in phase 1 also spawn a few little orbs around them that move toward the boss. Each player has to run into their own orb to soak them and prevent them from getting to the boss and buffing him. And the orbs give stacks of a big damage and healing buff. Then it's back to phase 1. I told you we're keeping these previews short. Gotta do another mic change. The penultimate boss is Tindral Sage Swift, Seer of
This
the
is the
Flame.
eighth,
This is the
right?
boss
Eighth
right after
boss.
Smolderon. It
Yeah.
has 3 phases with a couple of Dragonflying intermissions between them. In every phase of the fight, the main thing the boss does is cast a mass root on the entire raid that
Ooh.
spawns vines that you can then kill to break free of the root, which you'll probably end up just grouping around the boss and AoEing everything down. And then
Makes
there's
sense.
a few mechanics that you need to move for, which makes getting out of these roots quickly super important, like random swirlies on the ground, a debuff you have to dispel that drops fire on the ground, and the tank mechanic that spawns circles around the boss that do a ton of damage. Phase 1 also has big fire tornadoes to dodge. Phase 2 has seeds on the ground that everyone needs to run over to prevent them from growing into a tree that wipes the raid. And Phase 3 has both the
Okay.
Phase 1 and 2 mechanics on top of everything else. The intermission after
That's
Phase 1 and
a
2 are the
classic
big
in
memorable
MMOs.
parts though. The boss flies away toward the next platform, leaving
It's like a
everyone a feather
rage.
that they can run over and use to be able to dragon ride
Oh.
after the boss. On the way over there are some fire orbs to dodge and some green orbs that the raid can spread out and collect to get a big damage buff. Once the boss lands, he starts a long raid wiping cast and you have to nuke him to break his shield and interrupt the cast. It's actually a pretty cool way to
I
incorporate
like that.
dragon flying in a
I
fight.
like
and back
that.
to the regular mic. So for Fyrak, he's the last boss
This is
of the
the
raid,
final boss.
and we usually make a prediction
The
guide,
villain
but the prediction guide takes
of
like
this
30 hours
of
between
the
Zax and I,
Dragonflight
so
story, I
that
think.
video is gonna probably be up pretty quickly after this one. It's probably already out for early access anyway, so check the description, and if not, it'll be out in a few days. If you made it this far into the video, then you might be able to help us. We're heavily considering making a newsletter every month that goes a little deeper into the guides, our process, big news that's happening in World of Warcraft and in Blizzard, as well as other tips and suggestions on gamer life and stuff like that. This is like a monthly or bi-weekly type newsletter thing, email newsletter. So if you're thinking you'd be interested in that, you can sign up with the link in the description. It's absolutely free. There's no spam, no bullshit. It's just helpful stuff that comes in your inbox once or twice a month. Now also, what do you think about my Lion King cup? I think it's pretty sweet. Come to the Discord if you want to say hello. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. Don't give a shit. What?
Oh, they didn't announce it. Didn't show the final boss. Okay. But I did it here. I'm not gonna see. I'm not gonna watch it. I'm not gonna. Or should I? I'm doing it.
Hey, we pulling? Alright, so here's what you need to know about Fyrak, the last boss in the new raid. There's no actual footage of the boss since it wasn't tested, so we'll update this guide once we can confirm the best strategy from Heroic. These predictions take a
Oh,
ton of time.
is this what they're gonna? No, I'm not watching this. Okay, no. Now they did it. I'm done. That was it. I enjoyed the video. I'm not watching the rest. The raid comes out in like 6 hours or something like that. And it's probably gonna take them 8 to 12 days to complete. Maybe 9 days or something like that to get to the final boss. So I'm not gonna watch it. GG. That was a fun video. This one.
Alright,
Really well done. The raid looks really fun. I might even play it in a couple of days or something like that, because also the Lost Ark new class is coming out and I wanna play it. So maybe after I get it to 1540, the Soul Eater, I might play this with my warrior.